Good evening, ma'am.
Hey, how are you?
Welcome.
It's a good thing I run early and not late, gentlemen. How are you?
Okay.
Good, good, thank you. Thank you.
Well, let me give you a quick explanation of what we're going to do. We have
Certainly.
about a 15-minute interview. Each council member has a question for you. You have 15 minutes for this, so time management on the way you answer those questions is your responsibility. I want you to know that everything that we do and say in here is being recorded and will be on Bowie Cable TV and sometimes subsequent to the final action. At the conclusion of the questions, we'll give you an opportunity, if you have some time remaining, to tell us a little bit about yourself and whatever thought you want to leave behind.
Certainly.
All right, and with that, I'm going to start with Mr. Marcos.
Thank you. Good evening. Is it okay if I set my stopwatch so I...
Don't worry about it, I'll take it. We got a timer in front of you. Oh, you can do your own timer if you like.
Thank you.
All set?
Good evening.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your interest.
Thank you.
My question deals with development, and it's a two-part question. How do you feel about going forward with residential and commercial development in Bowie? And what do you think the relationship between the county and the city of Bowie should be with regards to that development?
Sure. Thank you for your question, Councilman Marcos. I'll start by reflecting on the logo and the motto that I see in front of me, which is that Bowie stands for growth and progress. Without development, there is no growth or progress. However, I feel that it's very important in maintaining the standard of living that Bowie residents have come to appreciate and expect, that we develop appropriately. In terms of what that means for residents, it can mean mixed-use development. It can mean development that is specific to needs of one particular segment of the population. But in all of that has to be considered the core spirit of what makes Bowie Bowie. In addition to that, I think you have to pardon me for being out of breath, I just rushed in a little early. But in addition to that, I know that there are some, Prince George's County has done a wonderful job with the creation of DPI over the past 7 or 8 years before Executive Also Brooks took office. But with that said, zoning is still a county council, it falls under their domain. With that said, I think that it might be appropriate to explore how Bowie might relieve some of the burden that's on the council by doing some of that work on our own, thereby fast-tracking development that's most important to residents of Bowie.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Trout.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for applying for the position of councilperson for District 3. My question is, what do you think is the most important issue in Bowie, and how do you plan to make improvements?
Sure, thank you for your question, Dr. Trout. One of the things that I try to keep in mind, enjoying the amenities of a city like Bowie, is that services are needed across a wide range of the demographics, whether it's sporting facilities for our youth, whether that be ice hockey rinks, and my son played ice hockey here in the Bowie rink for many years, or whether it be the basketball courts that are desperately needed, or whether it be the soccer fields where I now feel like I've taken up residence at Allen Pond. I'm there so frequently with my son's soccer team. If there a plan to put tents there, I'm sure he would have us staying in them. But with that said, in order to provide those services, it requires generation of revenue. And there's really only two ways to grow your tax base, and that's either through raising taxes on existing residents, which to my knowledge no one has lined up outside of City Hall and asked us to raise taxes, or by developing appropriately. And so in doing that, I think adding additional perspective on what should be developed, the priority of when it should be developed, would be appropriate in terms of looking at how to keep those services at the same high level that we've come to expect here in Bowie. In terms of what would change, because you asked the two-part question there, I do think that it's fair to acknowledge that Each generation has specific needs with regards to recreation, with regards to services in the city. And so I think it's always appropriate to do a temperature check across a range of demographics to make sure that we're meeting the needs of each of those demographics. So if we don't have lots of seniors playing soccer, maybe there's something that would be appropriate for seniors, pickleball or disc golf or something like that. But in all of that, we cannot allow the let's say the entertainment budget to exhaust what the city likes to keep in reserve to stay fiscally responsible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Davis Hayes, for coming out this evening.
Thank you.
So very much.
Thank you.
My question or statement to you this evening, it is my opinion that local government is the most important level of government. Explain why you either agree or disagree.
So, the old saying goes, all politics are local. Who and what we interact with most on a daily basis is affected by ordinances or laws or regulations that are here in Bowie. So if neighbors are having issues with code enforcement, they don't call President Trump, they're calling on local services. If our residents are having issues with streetlights being out or an issue potentially with hoarders being in the community, they're looking to us to solve the problems that are most pressing in their daily lives. And so I actually do agree with that statement. The biggest opportunity to have impact is in local politics, because there really is no barrier. There's no, as I understand it, you may have a state senators or assemblymen that have chief of staff that are serving to screen needs of constituents. But here we're more on the front lines of how the residents want to interact and live in the city that they've chosen to call home. So I do agree with that sentiment.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Wolfley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to you for coming out and spending some time this evening and volunteering your services. My question is, to date, how have you chosen to serve the city of Bowie? For example, have you served on a city committee, run for office, been on a HOA, PTA, or the like? And how will that help you represent your constituents?
Certainly, that's an excellent question, Councilman Wolfley. I have a very long history of community service here in Bowie, having relocated back to the East Coast from California and started in the PTA at Pointer Ridge Elementary School. I continue to serve right now, although it's not Bowie specific. My son is at a junior at DeMatha, and I serve with some specific committees and interests there. Additionally, from my career, which I hope to share a little bit about with you if there is time permitting, I have gotten quite a reputation for assisting seniors with regards to prescription or medical bill issues. And so that's been a labor of love more than it has been an appointed position. So once your phone number makes its way to one community, it finds its way very quickly to other communities if you're an effective advocate. And that's something that I do at no charge. That's actually a labor of love. With all of our conflicting healthcare rules and regulations, it can be a challenge for us, specifically even our seniors, to navigate that. In addition, although I'm not currently serving on a city committee, I think it might even be appropriate to explore whether a senior task force is something that we could look at. I hear a lot of concerns from seniors that are in my neighborhood as far as how do they access services that maybe are not specific to Bowie. So for instance, how do they address issues with their prescription? Who do they call? How do they get a bill paid? What happens there? And so I'd be certainly happy to look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Stepp.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The Sears location in Bowie Town Center is closed. The owners of the property are planning a mixed-use development for the site. What are your thoughts on the matter?
Thank you, Councilman Estev. So this cuts across all of the issues that we've been speaking about up until now, from quality of life to local politics, et cetera. One of the things that I'm very conscious of is a that was enacted by President Trump in 2017, which is the Tax Act, which created opportunity zones. If you're not familiar with opportunity zones, I have brought a packet here for you to review. Opportunity zones have created some specific tax incentives for developers to develop, and all of the communities that are in Prince George's County that will receive the benefit of those opportunity zones happen to be inside of the Beltway. So for instance, they line up almost perfectly with hub zones, revitalization zones, et cetera, et cetera. So when we look at the Sears pad, we're looking at a developer who has chosen to develop despite not having any of those incentives. So it's upon us to work closely with any potential developer to create wins for current residents, for future residents, and that can be anything from making sure that things like shuttles are considered if we have millennials that are wanting to move in, if they're choosing to build apartments, to get them to mass transit, things that are high on the interest list of those that the city would like to attract. And from that perspective is how I think we should look at the development of the Sears pad. In addition, because the city does not necessarily have access to all of the incentive programs that the county of Prince George's has, if we as a city elect to share some incentives with any developer so chosen, we have to be very careful how we're using taxpayer dollars in terms of providing incentives. We have to make sure that they're being used appropriately. We have to make sure that the development meets, again, the spirit of Bowie, understanding that growth and progress calls for development, but certainly not wanting to alienate any of our current residents who are here and who are currently contributing to the quality of life. One of the things that we might choose to look at are things that are being looked at best practices across the country. And I speak on being familiar with that because I am involved in some opportunity zone projects in my career. And some of the best practices can include things like performance guarantees or penalties that could be looked at and used as a mechanism to guarantee, or at least to the best of our ability, to Bowie residents that we won't be too disruptive in the process of growing Bowie's economy.
Okay. All right, that was the fun part. Now you got a couple of minutes to tell us a little bit about you and tell us whatever you want the last message to us to be.
Certainly. Well, first of all, I know that it's been a considerable effort on your part to listen to and interview all of the interested candidates. And so first of all, a word of appreciation to all of you for taking your time to do that. I will tell you that should I be fortunate enough to be appointed to the position, I will not consider it a lame duck position. I will absolutely consider it as a run-up to my intent to run for this seat in the coming election. And so that's the spirit with which I'll come. A little bit about myself personally. I'll share with you, Mayor, specifically. I am the consummate American experience. My parents are both United States Marines. You know, you're once a Marine, you're always a Marine, so you don't say former, hoorah. I was born at Walter Reed, and specifically, my father is white, my mother is black. They will complete their 53rd year married in April, which is quite a feat for single-race couples, much less couples of mixed races in a country which hasn't always put its best foot forward in terms of recognizing that diversity creates strength. So the other thing that I'll share with you is that I am a mom. I'm a single mom, so I've been the entire range of relationships, currently divorced, was married for 16 years, and in the process I have a daughter who is a video game engineer with a degree in computer science from University of Baltimore and a specialty in 3D simulation. I also have a son who is 17, who is a junior at DeMatha High School, and he chose to stay here and chose to attend DeMatha because of the spirit of brotherhood, and so it's incumbent upon me to make sure that I do everything I can to get him the best opportunities that he can have. In terms of my career experience, which I believe will be very helpful to the council, I've spent 25 years in Fortune 50 companies, and not Fortune 500 or Fortune 5,000, but Fortune 50 companies. The vast majority of my experience has been working with teams of all men, whether I've been leading men or whether I've simply been an individual contributor on the team because of the rank in which I've achieved in those positions. So I've done that across United Healthcare, Aetna, Prudential, and most recently I did that for a small Maryland-based firm. I served as the Director of Development, and I was able to bring to them inking deals with companies like Humana, MetLife, Colonial, Unum, Task, all of the companies that really they didn't have on their radar to attract because they didn't have that skill set. So I think of myself as able to listen effectively, although this experience is really about me talking. One of the best things that I would like to bring to the council is the ability to listen with a different perspective, including the ability to speak Spanish. So if you speak Spanish, that's wonderful. I think being good world citizens requires that we, on some level, look to reach out to people that are different than us and to build bridges and to make sure that we're welcoming folks that deserve to be in our community or should be in our community, that we're reaching out to them with open arms.
Okay, your time is up.
Thank
Well,
you.
appreciate that. How's that for timing? You hit it right on.
15:10.
Thank you very much for participating with us tonight. I think we have one or two more left to do tonight, and then we'll hopefully make a decision soon.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.